Well, welcome to the Chiswick roundabout, and what is the start of the Great West Road. So, pretty grim start, noisy too. So the reason why I'm doing this video, and I meant to do this video so many times, is because the Great West Road celebrated its 100th birthday almost a month ago, 30th of May 1925. So this road that I'm walking along, or certainly the first section of it, is 100 years old. And I've decided to walk from the Chiswick roundabout through to Gillette Corner, which is basically the Golden Mile, as it was called. The reason why it was called the Golden Mile, it's something that was sort of acquired that name from the writer J.B. Priestley, who had been on this road in the early 1930s, and because he'd seen all the illuminated buildings that were on alongside it, he thought it looked a little bit like the Golden Mile in Blackpool, which had all its illuminations. So that's the reason why it's called the Golden Mile, apparently. I used to work on this road, actually. I'll show you where in a second. But I'm going to start by the reason for doing it is just to look at the old factory sites that are on this road, the most noticeable ones, the most obvious ones. So this one here, where there's a B&Q, used to be the Hudson Essex Motor Works. And Hudson were an American manufacturer, but they had their factory built here on this site in 1926, and in fact it was literally a year after the road had opened. This piece of fencing here was almost certainly part of the original site, but I'm going to be showing you something which is definitely an original part of the site, even though the factory would have been pulled down probably in the 1970s, and that this big shed would have gone up in the 80s almost certainly. Now Hudson, to avoid import restrictions as an American manufacturer, had their cars semi-assembled, semi-manufactured in Canada, which is nearby obviously, and part of the British Empire at that point, and they brought in all these kits basically and then finished the work off here at what is essentially Chiswick at this point. This big structure here, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with, is the M4 elevated section, which opened in the mid-60s, mid-1960s, and totally changed the way this road could be perceived. And for this length all the way along through to Boston Manor Road was effectively in the shadows. So this bit here, this bit of wall and these gate posts are part of the original setup for Hudson. And in fact this entrance bit here would have been levelled out, and there would have been a showrooms which was done in brick. Now the bit I wanted to show you, I'm wondering if it's actually gone. It was next to the bus stop. So it's become so overgrown here that it's now obscured. I mean, I worked on this site about 8 years ago and it wasn't like this. So the wall's been painted over because it's been graffitied. It was actually just brick finish. And there was a section of the brick which was a different colour, and that's where the Hudson sign was. So the Hudson sign was about here underneath all this lot. And on top of this structure, brick structure, there was a plinth which they could put a car, and it'd be the latest car so they could show it off. How much of that exists I don't know, but this all looks a little bit like vulnerable, so I can't help thinking there's a pretty good chance that whatever happens next on this site, this wall will go. So bit of a shame. These tin cans up here have a story, rather strange story. When I used to work on this site 2017, down there underneath the flyover there was a homeless man who lived in a sort of shelter, and he used to come out and feed some cats that used to live here, wild cats. And I don't know whether that has continued, whether people have taken it, because he looks like he passed away a number of years ago. But these tin cans are cat food cans, I know that. I'm very, very sure of that. So once people have fed them, they put the cans on the top, spikes. But you weren't expecting that. Anyway, I think we need to move along a little bit. But these are all part of the Hudson Works, these brick posts. Now, if I was really crafty, I'd show you pictures of what the factory looked like, you know, edit it all in. And one day I might be that good, but I'm not, I'm afraid, at the moment. Now we're moving up to a large building that was put up in the late 50s, early 1960s, and it was called Flyover House originally. It's now called Vantage London. And this is the building I used to work in for all of 6 months in 2017, late 2017 and into 2018, June 2018 I finished. That's because there was a magazine publisher I used to work for, and yeah, they were originally actually in North Acton, and I'd worked for them before. So we're going over a railway bridge. I'm going backwards and forwards, I'm talking and not thinking. This is a freight line. It's not a passenger line, it's a freight line that runs through from, I think, Brentford and then on to Kew. I don't know too much more I can recount to you, but basically, yeah, this is all part of the original spec of the Great West Road, so this bridge would have been put in at the time. Now, the road was actually constructed as a relief bypass for Brentford, and it would have been built in the early 1900s if it hadn't been for the First World War. There was a real need to get all the commercial traffic out of Brentford and Isleworth, as it was clogging the streets and it's so bad. And so they decided they needed a road that would be a new road, a new wide road out of Chiswick, where we'd just been, and out eventually into Windsor and beyond. And so this road was built for that purpose, and it's only after it had arrived that then manufacturers decided, and many of them Americans, so this was a great place to set up a factory. They had lots of free land because this was agricultural land, there's farmland, there was nothing here, and so they could build whatever they wanted to, as big as they wanted to, and that's what happened. So this was originally, it's all been clad now, but it was originally built for Wimpy, and it was their commercial arm that dealt with civil engineering. So they were here probably through until the mid-70s, and then it went through various different changes into offices. I think now there's a fairly good chance it's going to be turned into apartments, as a lot of offices are, especially on this road. Over on the other side of the road, this is all now things like self-storage and car showrooms, but originally on this side of the road there was a company called Teclamit who made lubrication oils, etc., and also North Thames Gas, and those buildings were rather stately, not very Art Deco, and when they were put up I would imagine it was probably the late 20s, early 1930s. And the next one we're moving up to, noisy isn't it? The next one we're coming up to is at the site of, first of all, not a factory, but it was originally the Henleys car showrooms and service station. Now this clock, I don't think it's the original clock, but it is a facsimile of the Henleys clock, which would have been an Art Deco structure. It was built in 1937, finished in 37, and apparently the original clock had the clock, and it had the word Henleys down the side of it. I realise actually I'm talking rather a lot. This is going to be a long video. I may need to pause in between just to break it up a little bit. I need to move a bit faster, Mark. I'm waffling too much. I knew this would happen. So this is sort of dead time, isn't it? This is where you should edit bits out, but I'll move along. And what I'm going to do is just try and break it up into the factory bits to save on time. So this site here which is now empty, was originally Data General, an American computer company, software company, data storage. But that was originally the site for Smith's Crisps, who were here from 1927 right through until 1970. And the conglomeration of buildings, well, one of the buildings had wonderful advertising panels on the side of it. And Gunnersbury Park Museum have some photographs of when that was uncovered, just before the building was pulled down in 1987. So there's the clock again. So this site here, as you were moving out, would have been a big car showrooms with an enormous canopy and loads of petrol pumps. There's fantastic pictures online that you can access to see that. Now I am going to show you proof that this was Smith's here by going down the set of steps. This is one of the many underpasses under the Great West Road. And whether or not it's original I don't know. When it was put in, it may not have been original. But down here I know there's a little sign. There you go. Pumping station, Smith's factory. So there's actual evidence that it was. It's me, the Smith's Crisp factory. So I'm going to do a little bit of a pause and then pick up. So we just moved past the old Smith site, and then along here there's another site which was offices put up in the I don't know, 80s or 90s, but it was originally the factory for British Oxygen Company. They make gases for commercial uses, cylinders, etc. But as I said, it's now an office block which has been converted into apartments. It's a fairly sort of common thing now. So the Great West Road has gone from being a piece of open land with agriculture, then factories, then offices, and now apartments. So I don't know what they're calling this thing. It's fairly bland, isn't it? But it was a very bland building when British Oxygen Company had it. It was just brick finish, nothing of any great sort of quality. So unfortunately I am seeing everything on the perspective of this side of the road, which means that perhaps I'm missing out on a few things there. The offices for Sega are on the other side of the road there, but it was originally an office put up for Alfa Laval, who made all sorts of dairy equipment originally. Now this is an entrance into Gunnersbury Park and Gunnersbury House, and it sat right next to the British Oxygen Company site. It's in a terrible state. I mean, it's actually degenerated in the time that I was last here. It's all scaffolding. I'm desperate need of some money being spent on it, which I'm sure will eventually happen. But yeah, that's the other aspect to this factory, is that where the Smith's factory was, right behind it was Gunnersbury Park. It's more of the flyover. I'm actually walking in the cycle path. This new BP Pulse station is very new. I was quite surprised to see it turn up. Originally I remember it just being well, all along here it's just being some sort of rough ground, but it originally had a house on it, which was something to do with at one stage, looking at archive footage, was something to do with a company that was involved with construction equipment. Pretty random. See how dark and grim it starts to become. These are all the bits coming off the M4 elevated section, and these, as it separates out, two ramps that takes traffic up onto it. So we just moved along a bit here. I am going to do, probably it's going to end up being 3 videos this. So this is going to be part 1. I'm doing this as I'm walking along, thinking how I'm going to do it, because there's no way that I can do one continuous video. It's just going to be too long. So this is a park, and it's Carville Hall Park. So actually on the other side of the road, I may have to get over to the other side of the road, is Carville Hall. And you know, without being trying to be too witty, the Great West Road literally carved the land that was Carville Hall and its grounds into two. and Carville Hall sits on the other side of the road over there, but the rest of its grounds ended up being a public park. So someone sort of gained from it, and that park would have possibly been made a little bit, no, it wouldn't necessarily be made smaller by this, but if you look online, Huntley Film Archives, if you look in YouTube, have got some footage of the Great West Road. So if you put in Great West Road, Huntley Film Archives, you'll find some footage of this all under construction, and literally you'll see the sort of stems, these bits that are supporting the road in place, but not the road itself. And that would have been shot possibly around about sort of 1962, something like that. It's not done too well, it's aged quite badly, but it is a fascinating insight into the past. And for me that sounds like the recent past, but it's, for other people it's not, because it's like 60 years ago, my god. Anyway, just how old is Mark? So I think we're just moving up to something that probably might require me being on the other side of the road, but it's another of our showpiece factories. So I did a radio slot about the Great West Road, and if you're watching this before the end of June, you can pick that up. It's on the Robert Elms show for Sunday the 22nd of June. That's when I did it, and it's comes in at about an hour and 8 minutes after the start of the programme, and you can listen to that on BBC Sounds. I did a slot which was only about 20 minutes long about the Great West Road and the factories on it. It was a marathon to get it done, a bit like trying to do this video. There's so much to cover in a relatively, short amount of time. And some of this, unfortunately, has ended up as being slightly dead space. But anyway, let's just carry on anyway. This is, over there, you can see a building that says Barrett. Now that was originally built for a company called Simmons Aero Accessories in 1936 through to 1940s. Built in stages, and Simmons made aircraft accessories, all sorts of things, gauges, all sorts of bits and pieces that went in aircraft, and they would have benefited quite nicely from the Second World War, when there was a high demand for bits and pieces. This shot here really does tell you what happened with this elevated road, because before it was built, up to the 1950s, late 50s, you would have seen what is now called Wallis House in all its glory, and now it's cut by this elevated road. So this will require me crossing the road, but at the top of the building you'll see a figure of a pilot with wings behind him, and that is called Inspiration to Flight, and it was erected on top of the building as an indication of what the company who owned it did. So I'm going to make this part 1 18 minutes long, and hopefully part 2 and 3 will be a little bit more interesting for you. So please do keep tuned and go to the next video, and thank you for watching.